Thank you very much. We are now live and it's 6:30, so if we can start the meeting, thank you. So this is the first meeting with the Museum and Archive Committee since the May civic year. So we are, the first item on the agenda is to elect a chair for this Museum and Archive Committee. Do I have any nominations, please?
Councillor Paul.
Is there anyone to second? Are there any other nominations? Okay, so if we could put that to the vote, please. Let's say one stone. Okay, thank you very much. In the absence of, obviously, the Mayor, who is now the chair of the committee, and he is the vice chair, I'd like to ask if there's anybody who's prepared to chair the meeting this evening. And I wondered if members can agree somebody to chair the meeting this evening. Is there anyone that's prepared to do that? Councillor Franklin is prepared to chair. Is everybody happy with that? Yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
I'm just going to get my pen out and you beat to it. Thank you. Item 2. Item 2, apologies for absence received.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from the Mayor, who has a mayoral commitment this evening. Councillor Morehouse has a meeting commitment. Councillor Fortescue a travel commitment, and Councillor Marie a work commitment.
Okay. Yeah. Item 3, declarations of interest. To receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on this agenda. Item 4, public participation. A 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of the business on the agenda. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak, together with the topic to be addressed, must be given to the town clerk prior to noon of the following day of the meeting.
No requests.
Okay. Item 5, terms of reference. Members to receive the adopted terms of reference for the committee, which have been approved by Sandwich Tollbridge Fund. Item 1A.
Are we allowed to make any suggestions and amendments? Because if it has been adopted by the Tollbridge Fund, I'm not sure that we're permitted to say anything. Could we have some clarification, please?
Yes, so of course if you want to feedback any comments, that's more than welcome. It's not something I think Museum Coordinator said we're going to consider at this meeting here, but certainly you can feedback any comments or anything that you want to raise, and we can obviously take that away from the meeting and explore.
I do in that case have a couple of points, if I may make them, Mr. Chairman. Again, I think it's this thing about under decision delegated powers. I raised this before with some other terms of reference. All committee meetings should be open to the public and press except for. But surely the whole thing is that it depends entirely on the vote, which I notice has now been included. In the other committee's terms of reference, it hadn't been included, so it is now included. So it just strikes me that quite a bit of that section is irrelevant, because it's up to the committee meeting to determine that. And the second point I've got is when it comes to delegating to the town clerk and the RFO, these seem to be lifted from a completely different committee and don't seem to be particularly relevant to this committee. It's a minor point, but I believe in trying to get the documents right first time, every time.
I'm happy to answer that. So with the STC terms of reference, all the committees are in one document, and that's what I've done the same for the Tollbridge Fund. So at the bottom of all the individual terms of reference for each committee, they've got these substitution delegations and mayor's powers and delegation to the town clerk on both sets of terms of reference. So it's not particularly to one committee, it's covering everything that comes under the remit of the Tollbridge Fund committees. Does that make sense?
Patentary rules in this corner. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to make a comment about the terms of reference. It's interesting that under the members paragraph, which is the first paragraph, it says the committee shall consist of up to 9 councillors. And then the second bullet point, the committee shall in its voting membership entirely consist of councillors. And actually it's striking that that is different from the terms of reference for the finance committee, which at the second bullet point says the committee shall entirely consist of councillors. So the point I wish to make is that I do think that it would be helpful if this committee had co-opted members. I think it would be helpful, indeed I think it would be necessary to put in an additional bullet point to say under the members section that this committee can have up to 3 co-opted members, which is according, as I remember it, in accordance with the standing orders for the whole council. And the reason why I say that is because I think that in this town there is, well, I think there are 2 reasons. The first is that in this town, there is, and beyond it, but close by, there are residents who have particular expertise in the area of museum and archives, who have themselves been in the past curators and archivists and so on, of major collections. And the second reason is that I do think that one of the ways in which an organisation understands the issues that are coming up is by consulting with and involving the people who are actually delivering the service. And in our particular case, it's not just the museum coordinator, it's also the volunteers. And I think it would be very useful, and I know that there are at the moment at least 2 councillor members who are also museum volunteers, but that would not necessarily be the case for everyone. And I think it would be very useful if this committee could have a representative of the museum volunteers as a co-opted member.
So it'd be similar to the planning committee, would we have 3?
We could have up to 3.
Yeah.
I mean, we may not get 3. It's possible that these people that I'm thinking of who have an expertise, who are local, will say, if invited, well actually, that was a long time ago and I've walked away from that and now I'm into beekeeping or whatever. But they may not.
I have a couple of comments. I'll bring Millie in after that as well. I do know that, I think it was the last meeting, the meeting before, it was talked about co-option, and Millie said that when we get to a point where we need particular expertise, we can recruit for co-opted members. I think that's my understanding. So I think the issue we have really is if we co-opt people that don't necessarily have the skill set or are here on board when the project necessity is here, it is really then they might feel superfluous to things because we might not be in a position, with their particular expertise.
Well, I'm talking about people who have a generic expertise in running museums and running archives.
I
Those
just
are the
think,
sorts of people that I have in mind.
yes, that's one point to make. And the other thing was about volunteers. I know that Millie heavily consults with the volunteers here. They are consulted on a lot of occasions behind the scenes, not necessarily that the council or the Tollbridge Fund will know about it, but she certainly does do a lot of consultation with the volunteers.
Yes, but that has to come through in the papers, and I think it would be very helpful if we had somebody here present who can say these are the issues that are important.
Yeah, I'll go to explain the first point first. So it was on, I think it was the first agenda, so it was November 2023. We talked about co-opting two people with specific skills. So one of them was in relation to finance, and one of them was in relation to learning. And that idea was approved. There were no time limits on it, and the reason it hasn't happened, which I explained in an agenda later on, is because in the case of learning, I don't have the capacity to develop the learning programme. Therefore, it's just not something that we need at this point. But the idea was that we would have people co-opted for specific projects that have, like learning as an example, that have that knowledge, or maybe marketing or something like that, that would be able to support those things, be in the meetings, and maybe potentially give me a little bit of their time outside the meeting to support me. So that was that idea, and then it was approved that co-opted members would be selected with a recruitment process, so that was approved in those minutes. In relation to the volunteers, I do.
Can I just come back on the finance part, because I'm not clear what you mean. I mean, could you explain what you mean by having, because obviously we have financial expertise in the Guildhall staff. So what do you mean by finance?
So what I mean is the museum does, and kind of it's not being communicated as hugely, because I think it needs more work, but it does have a kind of a budget for various things. I have an idea of how much money we might spend on certain areas of work that the museum does. I think it is, from my perspective, in the town clerk might be able to comment on it, is a matter of capacity, in that we do have those skills and that knowledge and experience within the staff, but the finance officer, from my perspective, doesn't have time to have, or the capacity to have, a really good understanding of what the museum's trying to do and how it's trying to operate and what we're spending money on and the money we're making. Of course, she does those documents, but it's also helping me develop my understanding, because it would be useful for me to be able to communicate the financial information better to the committee. And so the idea was that someone would be here to support me on that, and also support with that outside of meetings, possibly.
Yeah, I think.
But I understood it to mean somebody who had expertise about sources of funding. But that's not what we're talking about.
I think it was a dual aspiration, if you like. And I think what Millie's trying to say is like a strategy, somebody who would be able to work on a financial strategy, and certainly she's quite right that at the moment there isn't capacity in the Guildhall staff to undertake something like that. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and we are very soon needing to develop the forward plan in a way that will meet accreditation standards. There's other plans to follow first, because they feed into the forward plan, but that will have budgets and financial information attached to it in terms of action planning and what we think we might spend on certain tasks and things like that. And it's having someone that has the time to actually understand what it is that we need to be doing, and understand the operational things and the money in relation to that, and the staff within the Guildhall.
I think we've allowed that we can do this, haven't we?
Yes,
so we can have two people co-opted on when they are required. I think so.
I was going to say that this sounds quite an involvement in it. I wonder if it's better to think about trying to get an additional. I know you've got a full complement of volunteers now, haven't you? You get 3 surplus, I think. Is trying to perhaps to get somebody who would volunteer on this, because this sounds a lot more than the standard sort of person sitting on the council committee. I fully endorse what you said. I think that would be very useful. But I wonder if it might be slightly better to think about trying to get a very good, high quality volunteer who can spend the time, because I don't know if some of the people that Councillor Anderson is thinking about necessarily the time or the capacity. I certainly know one or two people who've got obviously archival experience, museum experience, but funding and stuff like that. I just wonder if it might be something to think about.
Yeah, the recruitment, the idea was that it would, I think we talked about this probably when I had this idea, that they would, it's similar in a way to having a trustee or a board of trustees that actually might change depending on what work is happening within the museum, but obviously we can't do that here. But those 3 co-opted members could be used in that way, which would be really useful, because we might have a specific project and someone can come on board for that duration, and so they would be asked to attend the quarterly meetings and put aside a certain amount of hours as kind of as a volunteer, because that's what the capacity is, to support me as and when we could organise that ourselves. So it's sort of a similar
you think it's right, but I think it's more than a conventional person here.
Yeah, that's what it's as and when they need it.
Yeah.
If we're doing this terms of reference, does it mean it has to be amended, have to come back, or what?
So I'm happy to take the comments away that Councillor Brown and Councillor Anderson have raised and have a conversation with Millie, and then obviously with the report back to committee at the next meeting if you're both happy with that.
Would it have to go to the Tilbridge Fund as well?
It would, but what I would like to do, obviously, because there's not many councillors here this evening, I think it would be prudent to bring it back to the next committee meeting with your comments and ask them if they're all in support before it goes to the trustee. Thank you.
Item 6, update on operations. Members to receive an update on museum operations.
So this item,
Attachment 2.
Yeah, shall I talk through this?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I've put in, so we've moved to how we sort of, how I report the figures. So I've started in April because I wanted to make it in line with the financial year, just it seemed to be a bit easier, especially when reporting donations and income. So for the visitor figures there, you can kind of see where we've improved in May and June, but April slightly lower. Again, I have a target. Last year we got to about 12,000 visitors, so the target is 15,000. That's what I've set it at. It's quite hard to tell how if we're going to meet that, especially as we've just had quite a lot of visitors for July, because we've had specific language schools book in. So that's really going to affect those figures. So I think we need to have a look at the next committee meeting, because obviously we'll have more months of data then. So yeah, and as I've said in here, so the quarter, it falls short, I think, of it compared to last year, but then actually the later months in summer had more figures last year. So again, I think the next meeting will have a much clearer idea of if we're going to reach that target. Also, it's a figure that I came up with, but I think ultimately the aim is to reach a higher figure than last year, and I just set that as a goal, which would be great if we reached it, but we just want to beat last year, so that's my thinking.
Well, 20% is quite a target to set this up.
The donations and income, I will read out the actual figures because these calculations are wrong. I know, I'm sorry. I went over these quite a few times, deciding the best way to report them. I think what has happened is I did have June's figure in here originally, but I've taken it out because it's not a confirmed figure yet. So I think that's what happened with my sums. So I can just run through those totals for you. So the donation total for this year is £841.47. The income is £198.19. The overall total is £1,039.66. I also actually did just earlier get hold of July's figures so far, just to give you an idea, because these numbers are lower than last year's. However, it's just a quick figure through the till, so it doesn't actually include our cash donations within this figure. But so far for July, it's £547.73 compared to last year, which was £280.39. So although April and May are lower, July looks higher at the moment. So I think we'll see that even out, possibly further on in the year. And as you can see, I've written a note about the reporting system, which is again where this issue of having perhaps someone co-opted in relation to finance is important, because of the way we make sales and use the till that collects donations. It collects donations for the Roman Bowl as well still at the moment. And then the fee gets removed off of the card. Anything that comes through the card, it's quite, the card system is quite complicated to calculate and separate out all those figures, because we have to remove the fee that they charge and then also add in separate cash and things like that. So it's a little bit of a complicated process. But I have made a new spreadsheet which will hopefully calculate all of that out, and if it does work out, I will try and get some time with the finance officer to check that, and if it does work out, then I should be able to report those figures much easier in the future. I think the last meeting I was asked to include the social media figures, so I've just put those in here. Generally, the idea, and it's quite an obvious one really, but the more things we post, the higher the figures are, just because there's more things for people to interact with. So I've just put those numbers in there to get an idea of what our reach is. The reach and I think we have, so Twitter they removed their analytics, so we don't have that anymore, but the reach is basically how many accounts it reaches, so it might not be that they follow us, but it's somehow being shared and more people have seen it. So I've just put those in there, but like I said, it's basically about having capacity to post on a regular basis. That's the key issue.
Yes. I was going to ask about these language school visits.
Oh yeah.
Because I've noticed them, and there are very large numbers of young people who come through. And I know that when the Association of Jewish Refugees comes, they get told there's an expectation that every person coming will give a minimum of a £5 donation. And I just wondered whether the same system could be applied to the language schools. I'm not saying that the young people should each produce £5, because I don't suppose they have it, but they much rather spend it on something else. But do we get any kind of monetary?
I think the tutors donate.
So the situation is that they informed me that they were visiting, and when groups do that, I will tell them it's usually, I think this group in particular, the organisation, clarified that it was free entry, and I would usually say it's free entry, but we appreciate donations, or we recommend, or we suggest things like that. But the issue that we have, I think, with the Jewish refugees, because they sit in the courtroom usually and have a talk, it's a slightly different situation, because these groups in schools could not tell me they're coming and turn up because it's free entry anyway. So it is useful that we know, because I can prepare the volunteers, but it's, it's a tricky situation because they could just choose not to communicate that and then still come and visit us and not donate. I don't know, sometimes places will specify how much they are going to give us, sometimes they'll want me to invoice them for it. But for these groups, I don't know specifically how much we have got through donations. But that's a difficult one to navigate because it is free entry anyway.
Yeah.
I don't think it's on this agenda, but we have had a discussion about something in relation to this, and I think it's worth considering, possibly maybe in relation to group size, if we could justify that in the future, probably a new item on a different agenda once we've clarified more details, but perhaps groups over a certain size, because it does limit our capacity for having other visitors come in, and then we might lose money that way, so we could perhaps justify, I think over 30 people or over 25 people, we would ask you to, or we would charge you even. But again, they could just
all these
turn
young
up.
people come from countries, because Britain is unique in offering free museum entry, and all become countries where the expectation is that if you're going to a museum, you pay, and sometimes you pay enormous amounts. I mean, American museums, the charges are huge.
Look at these students, they do purchase items, like souvenirs.
Yes.
Yeah, they often
So
say.
they're not that short of money, is that what you're saying?
No,
But
yeah.
I mean, obviously our culture about museum entry is completely different. And there should be perhaps used to, the expectation that you will actually.
So I think maybe we can take that away, and maybe there's a policy needed. And I think this would be very useful, even with the town tours. I'm thinking about that as well. Because obviously, if we're opening on days we're not technically open, on a Monday or a Tuesday, we open up the courtroom and the museum for the tours, the guides, don't we, Councillor Black? And we're very, very accommodating here. And I think it would be useful to have a policy for that sort of visit as well, that we have a policy, and it could be maybe a donation from the guides,
You'll have noticed my silence.
A
That's what's
donation
good.
from the guides.
No, from the town tours, we charge for town tours, and the money from that goes straight into the Historic Society,
Yes.
and it's a flat fee.
Yeah.
I think you would probably want to speak to the town tour, to the Historic Society committee.
Yes.
I am very reluctant to commit them to anything, but I do appreciate the point that when we phone up, we've had a very helpful reception, and so on, but we try and keep to a minimum, which is into the courtroom, back out again, unless the museum, because obviously we don't want to trigger alarms or anything else like that. So you might need to consider a two-tier structure, like free for just the courtroom or a bit more for the rest.
Yeah.
But I think the committee would need to decide, but I
Absolutely.
couldn't possibly comment.
Absolutely. But yeah, so if you're happy, we'll take that action away and really come up with a proposed policy that you can all debate at the next meeting.
Does the temporary exhibition, especially bringing people into a normal exhibition, haven't we? I know people have come in to see that. But I think once we could use that more, I think that'd be, I know that'd be every 6 months or something like or whatever, but I think it does draw people in, and because you advertise it as well, don't you?
Yeah, we've had the visitor survey has a specific question that mentions that exhibition. I don't have all the figures yet, but there are definitely people who've done the survey that came to see that specifically. I don't have all the figures on what percentage that is. I don't think it's more than 50%, but I think it's also not everyone does a survey, and also we are the main kind of proportion of our visitors are tourists, so they're coming to see the museum, not necessarily that specifically, but yeah, it has been.
There's one local lady I know, she's coming, she says, oh, there's my mum.
Yeah.
Let's go to see the museum.
Okay. research inquiries, we still have a sort of pause on taking them, although I have been receiving some of them anyway. We, later on anyway, there's a reference to a potential volunteer role, so I'll just move on from that. Volunteers and work experience, again, we just have had general movement within the whole team of people swapping positions. We also have, so we have one vacancy at the moment, but we have had a bit of interest, so I need to contact some various people. I've had quite a few students in this year. So we have had one student who was a college student who did a placement every week for a full academic year doing collections work. We've had a student who did 12 weeks as part of his Duke of Edinburgh volunteering. We had a student for a few days of their work experience through school. I think that's all of those students that we also have had. So we're part of the University Kent scheme again, so we've got 2 work placements taking place. We've had one of them already. And I also had some interest from some other people. So I've got 2 people that have started potentially as more long-term volunteers, or maybe just for the summer. One of them's definitely interested. She's come back to me and said she's very interested in being involved. They did a trial sort of shift to collections work. The University of Kent's employment scheme, like I said, we ran the experience day again as I did last year. I slightly changed the plan because last year they really enjoyed doing collections work and things like that for us, so I gave them more time doing that this year, so we got some work out of them really as well. Put some objects and documents into our spreadsheet, which is handy. But they found it really interesting. We've had one student placement, the other one has just started, and she just wrote a little bit of feedback about the time here, which she thought was very nice. And she has, I think she's still studying, and when she goes back to university, I think she might come and be a volunteer for a little while. So that's really good. The collections project, so we've done really well with the inventory. The last figure was 6,300 items. We're actually over. I've got 7,500 written here. We're actually slightly over that. The reference library collection has slowed down slightly because of having the time and staff basically to move more of the collection. Sorry. Question?
Yes, I have got a question. Because I've heard a rumour, and I just wanted to know what the position is, because I'm not clear myself. The inventory it's being digitised, is it? It is digitised. It will be accessible. Eventually, when it's complete, people will be able to go online and see what the archives contain.
That's not that's in terms of when you say digitised. No, the inventory is the minimum that we have to do for accreditation, which is have a list of everything and know where it is. We don't even have that yet. That's what we're making at the moment.
Yes, I realise that, but as somebody who uses archives, what I do is I go online and I discover what's in them. And then in one of the archives I'm using at the moment also have this incredible service where they offer to show you what the file contains remotely, and it's a free service. It's absolutely amazing. So I can see exactly what is in the file, and then I can make a decision as to whether to go to that place where that archive is held and look at the stuff. You know, actually handle it. And if that were possible here, which is the convention, I think, increasingly the case, I'm not suggesting the remote I'll go through the file for you and you tell me whether you want to go to the next page and so on. I'm not suggesting that, but I am saying that the catalogue or inventory or whatever you want to call it should be online.
My thought is that, it might be that somehow this is not the case, but I'm going to say that we are quite a few years away from anything close to that. We have to have an inventory first of all for accreditation, which I'm thinking more and more likely it might come next year. It could be 2026, but still we will not have this list done, I don't think. So it's the bare minimum we have to have for accreditation.
But how are you holding that inventory? I mean, it must presumably be a piece of software which is on a computer.
So so our server that holds the collections management system is deteriorating quite quickly. So we don't put data on the server because that is a whole other project that has to take place. That is a priority project that will be in the quarter plan, which is figure out the IT systems that we have. The problem we have there is that the server, certain types of CMS, collection management systems, work on certain servers. They need it might need a Microsoft license, it might need something else. It's quite complicated. I have an understanding of it, but not quite enough of an understanding. And so first what we have to do is we have to figure out what server we're going to have. Our current system that we pay for, the collection management system that we pay for at the moment, does not have that capability. It's the one that a lot of museums use because it's more affordable, but it doesn't have that. When I looked into this, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, the cost, I can't tell you how much we pay for ours currently. I want to say it's maybe £200 a year, but that's not for definite, but I don't think it's more than £1,000. The system that I looked at that would make so it would be a database, but it would upload to the internet basically, some form of that, and it was something close to £7,000 a year. The museum cannot afford that, but I think it's a long way down the line because it's a lot of, what I'd like to do is be methodical and think about what we need in the future, and maybe that is what we want to go for, but we also have to make a server that suits it. But what we're doing at the moment is we're working in Excel. That can be transferred to a CSV file, which we'll upload to that database system when we get it. That's all fine and that will work. And then there'll be a lot of work to do within that system. There's a lot of work to do.
So can I ask, how will people will have to come in person here and look at a printed out list, or how will they access what is held?
Well, so I know quite a lot of places do have collections online, but for the ones that don't, usually what happens is someone makes contact and says, I have a research inquiry to do with this subject or this thing, and then someone says, yeah, we have these items that are relevant, would you like to come and see them? And they book an appointment, someone else gets them out of the store where they're held, and into usually a research room, but obviously we don't have that here, so it'll be a room somewhere in the Guildhall. And then the person is able to look through them and take notes, and maybe take photos, depending on what it is they're doing with it. That's quite a normal procedure to have. And that's how that would work.
in relation, what I'm hearing is somebody who has been thrown in the deep end with regard to IT. I'm looking at here, 7,500 records. Yeah, it's a small Excel spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
It is a small Excel spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tiny database. It's the sort of thing, for example, I write databases for Southeast Water. They're not for public use, but they're online, so I can actually go on to my 50 to 100,000 line database. I can, as you say, you can download it to CSV, dead easy to upload onto SQL Server, SQL Express, what have you. And I would be quite happy to sit down with you and just run through what the challenges are. I'm not going to say I'd write something for you because that's not appropriate, but to actually go through and say, this is easy, this is a bit more difficult, and this is really complex. But a lot of what you're describing is it's easy. For somebody who knows who is it, lots of things you do, I would find complicated and difficult.
Yeah.
Things that you're describing, I'm hearing, what do I do next? Because you're not using, the words you're using are I hear, you're challenged. You're challenged by quite what do I do next? So if you do want some help there, I'd be more than happy to sit down and just go through and sort of say how we can approach this. The £7,000 a year it's a lot of money when I don't think you need to spend that.
No. I worked on a similar project previously. This is why I have a rough idea, but not enough. We had someone who, like you, understood the kind of the language and was able to communicate to the various IT companies and support people that kind of had, to have the software and things like that, to really get an understanding of the, I think the main thing was the type of server that we needed where I worked previously. Now we need a new server here, and obviously that is going to cost money. I think the situation is obviously that it's a big project to, more than anything, I think it's a big project to fund. But it does need to be in the forward plan. I'm very aware that it's something to figure out. But it doesn't mean that, again, the system is going to be online, because the current database we have does not allow for that. So we have to first agree, what do we want this database to do? Do we want it to be able to do? So there's certain things that I would find useful in terms of using it and kind of searching through it in terms of like back of house work. And then there's things that other people might want it to do, like be able to go online for the public to search. And it's really a case of deciding all of those things and understanding which software does that, and then deciding whether or not it's something that is affordable. But I don't think the museum can afford it to cost a huge amount more than the current
So I'm suggesting is it may not.
I think the thing with the town council, we've had a hiatus because everything's been upstairs. We spent quite a lot of money putting that new filing room, and that concentrate at the moment is actually a lot of things being repackaged as well.
Yes, but
I think it will come, but it will come in time, because unfortunately,
is it when?
I think it will come. We've got to get everything down and so she knows exactly where all the items are. I mean, people can come in at the moment and look at items. They might not be able to do it online, but they can come down.
I'm not saying that you look at the item online, you just look at the catalogue online and decide what it is. I mean, I take your point that, people doing research can ring up and say, I'm interested in X, and then you've got somebody here who will go and find what stuff you have on X. But that's actually not how research works, because if you have a catalogue in front of you, you can go through it and you can see things that you hadn't thought of were relevant, and suddenly you realise that that could be. And I've had that very exciting moment when you open up a file which you hadn't thought was actually relevant, and there's something in there that is absolutely on the right.
Okay. I think the thing to remember is that more and more things are going to be online, yet you have to have a long-term view about that. I do think it'd be very, very helpful to pick up Councillor Mallett's suggestion. He's got the expertise, and he's directed and say, the key thing, is this easy and doable, or is this something so complex that we have to defer it for 2 or 3 years? And at the moment, none of us in this room, I think, have a clear view of that. And I'd recommend that you take up the offer.
Yes.
It's not a quick fix, but it is something you'll know as well as me, and of course, Councillor Anderson will know. So much is online. You would almost not think of going to anywhere without checking first. Although it's amazing how even some top-notch museums have not got a lot of their display online. Quote Basel Kunstmuseum.
I'm not saying it's late, I'm just saying
Councillor Ripley, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm just really reiterating what Councillor Black has said about taking up Councillor Mallett's offer. And also, I think we just have to accept these things are going to take time. There's no magic wand here. There's a lot of, there is cost involved and time scales as well. So it's perhaps something to aim for in the future, but it's not going to happen overnight.
And I think a lot of the stuff isn't actually here because we've got the fire pumps at Whitfield, haven't we, which we own. And there's also stuff at Maidstone where they found the Magna Carta. We didn't know they were there. There's only some other researcher found that and the charge of them. So I'll be amazed what's that actually in Maidstone.
But I'm not saying it's a question of time, it's a question of that we have to have a visible, accessible catalogue online.
Okay, I will carry on. So we have done some of the photographic collection as well. It's that has been worked through by a student, but they now finished their kind of volunteering time with us. We've done around 100 of those entries, but some of it is within the main catalogue as well. Repacking, we changed the process of repacking actually, so we've actually, I changed the way that we are doing inventory slightly. So we've got repacking to do still, but in the meantime, inventory is being done and the locations where something currently is, even if it's in its old material, old boxes and not the new boxes, they're still noted with that location, which makes them much easier to access while they're waiting to be repacked. The accession registers, so we have got a volunteer that's working on this every so often. That has stalled slightly. I need to put some time aside to have a look through where we've got to. I know there was some complication in the past with accessioning things, and so there's going to be, I think, quite a lot of untangling we need to do of a spreadsheet and kind of understanding what has happened with the numbering system. And at some point in the future, there will be probably a process of de-accessioning, only because things have been accessioned multiple times, and just agreeing that one accession number is used for an object and not 3. So before, some things have been accessioned twice, definitely. I don't think anything hasn't. Things have maybe four numbers at times, which is a very confusing system. I don't think anything's been accessioned more than twice, but it's just I'm not allowed to de-accession without trustees' permission, but it is just literally a case of to select the number, not to remove anything from the collection. I've listed the temporary exhibitions here, a rough idea, so obviously we're at the D-Day exhibition's ending soon, and working on something for Speakers Day in relation to that. So there's a few things sort of scheduled in, and I would like to put something else on after the Speakers Day exhibition in sort of November, December through to February, across that kind of winter period, just to encourage people to come in. And I was thinking about the photographic collection because people are usually quite interested in that because they can recognise the streets that are in the pictures. But I'm not entirely sure on the best way to present that yet. I think is the issue that I'm having at the moment. So
We'll be having a new Lord Warden installed this year. We'll be doing an exhibition that's probably in the October as well, isn't it? I've seen the photos out there.
yeah,
Yes.
I thought about including some references to that anyway, because obviously it's speakers and it's Singapore related.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good. Good thing to mention. Okay. So accreditation, sorry.
So I was just going to say, accreditation, is it a concern, the fact we're not on the list, or is that a welcome relief to in practice?
It is a relief, really, yes. From the list, it looks like some of the museums on this most recent list were accredited last in 2016, which is when we were accredited.
Right.
So that's why I'm feeling like we might be called up on the next list or sometime soon. So the next one, I think they would be submitting, I think we said,
Yeah, you
from
said
March. Yeah, once you're on the list, you get 6 months.
you get 6 months. So
Yeah.
would it be a disaster if it happened to be later in 25 rather than March 25?
No, it wouldn't be a problem.
Right.
It's just
Thank you.
we are.
Thank you.
No, it's
That's fine.
I think we are getting towards being ready for that. The idea is that all the documents they should be in place anyway. So the idea is that they're all in place, and then it's a case of updating and asking if we have to have some of them we need trustee approval and signed approval.
I'm purely thinking of workload. You've got still a mountain to climb, and if you can manage to get all that in place, and then accreditation, that might be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, it's your professional decision as to the best way forward with that.
There's a report I think later on about our consultant and potential support from her, so that will help.
Saw that.
Okay, so we attended a careers fair at Roger Manwood School. So that was quite a nice thing to go and do. I've talked here about engagement. It was definitely useful to see what attracted the students to the different tables, and I do think it'd be useful for us to have some kind of materials that would maybe attract more attention. But my thought at the moment really is that we think about, when I get to thinking about having things like that within the museum, that they would kind of be dual purpose, so they could come with us when we visit places, but they're also in the museum in the meantime for people to engage with. We also, one of our newest volunteers actually has been in touch with me off the back of that, so I must have spoken to her there, and she's been in touch, and she did her first sort of trial shift doing some collections work, and she's been in touch to say she really enjoyed it, and she's going to come back at least for summer until she goes back to school. And lastly, just to mention that, which I'm sure everyone knows anyway, that Antiques Road Trip came and did some filming at the museum, which was very nice. And they asked lots of questions about our map of Party and Chartered Forest, and when I know it's airing, I will do lots of promotion and hopefully we'll get some people visiting.
Yeah, I think it's great that they've done that. And do we know how why did they contact Sandwich? What was the route? How did they find out that we were doing good things here? Do you know?
from my understanding, Mr. Laslett was contacted, I don't know how long ago, I believe it was quite a number of months or weeks ago, and they said that they were coming to Sandwich, and they did go to the medieval centre as well. So I believe that's where that
So it was through the medieval.
Yes.
Right.
They have been here before. So that one called Charles, he did it even in the sandwich shop, so everyone dashed over to get a photograph with him.
Yes, because I remember years ago when I was just starting the research on the kitchen account, the BBC came and did a little programme in which I was, and I talked about it, and I don't know how they heard about it. It was not.
The Pathic material, newsreels and everything, isn't it?
Yes, there was a competition, people had to write in and pick an object.
That's that for the update. So it's the next item.
Thank you. We've got 2 minutes.
Just wait.
Number 7, draft emergency plan. Members to receive a draft of the emergency plan for the museum, attachment 3, 3A, 3B and 3C.
Shall
I think Councillor Anderson was first.
I have to say I didn't read this absolutely, word for word, etc. But the word leaks caught my eye, and I just wondered whether all the volunteers know where a stop copy
So part of within the emergency plan there are things missing because I think it's confidential really, including building plans. However, as part of the emergency plan there will be building plans that tell you how to turn off the water and the gas and electricity, and within that will be included, and then the specific information that the volunteers should just know, for example, like the standard evacuation procedure, or if there was a medical incident, how to contact people, who to get hold of, that will be communicated to them quite specifically, so that they don't have to know necessarily everything that's in it. They need to know where the plan is and how to access it, but you can't memorise everything, so they will know the specific details, including that detail. But
does the stop clock have a label on it? I speak as somebody who discovered that her partner did not know where the stop clock was, and water was pouring through the ceiling, and only I knew. And if I'd been away, he wouldn't have been able to do a thing about it. And now we've put a label. So that's hopefully solved that problem.
so the building plan will specify where it is, and I will, when I haven't actually done that part of the plan, I do roughly know where it is, but I haven't actually been specifically to see it yet. So when I go and have a look, I will have a look with a caretaker, and if I feel like it needs some instructions with some photographs, then I will put those in the plan. Yes, that's...
Thank you.
I've got actually 5 points to make, and the reason is I've been at the receiving end of emergency plans, and I've also had to write them. Do you want me just to raise them as they come up, rather than go through all 5 of them now?
Who will be 5 of them now?
Yes,
Okay.
I think that might be quite
All
helpful.
right, okay. Can I just ask, you talk a lot about the emergency response team. Have they been nominated, and are they aware of it, and have you got all the contact details for them, including weekends and bank and public holidays?
So the emergency response team is made up of staff members. So it will be me and the town clerk, and I would imagine a caretaker and the property manager.
Correct.
Yeah. So they will be in there. That's the reason that's because this isn't a confidential item. That's
I
why
can
it's
understand that. I was just
yeah, and what we'll do is we will have a conversation about I will have a conversation with the town clerk about kind of weekend contact and things like that, just to decide on the best process for that.
Right.
Yeah, because we have work phones now, mobile phones now.
Official office ones, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the process of yeah, if someone's at home, what the best.
Well, the alarm goes off at night, just the caretaker turn up. We've had
Yes.
we've had them off in there before, and it's set the
I'm
burglar alarm.
on the call at the moment as well, so I'm hoping that will fall to the property manager.
Yeah, yeah. It's quite expensive.
Yeah, it's me and the caretaker at the moment.
Mock.
And related to that is specifically, you've got a slightly different response group when it's the possibility of a bomb at the weekend. It seems to be slightly out of kilter from what you're saying for the rest of the, believe me, having had to respond to things like that, you need to be very precise as to what you're going to do. I think I'm quite happy to take some of these offline.
Response teams.
Yeah.
Not there. That's fine. That's just
No,
something to
that's
pick up.
right.
Yeah.
The third item is flooding. I would have thought, given the way that there are now flood defences, that wouldn't you get quite a lot of warning of a potential flood? I mean, I'm not talking of a burst pipe, I'm talking of a flood. And so this seemed to be a little bit misplaced. Evacuate the building, you probably wouldn't be able to get in if you had a flood anyway. I just wonder if this needs a little bit of tweaking.
Yeah, so it was if we had a flood, if we were given a major warning that the outside of the building was going to get flooded, then we would need to evacuate the building because we wouldn't want people trapped inside by flood water.
Yeah.
So that's what that reference is. So yeah, that's kind of what that is that get out of the building. If it's already, if the area has already started to flood, then it's sort of, then you follow the process of needing
Which
emergency
is more likely,
services or
to be
something like
honest.
that. Yeah.
All right, and I think it's because I've had to do various things.
Yeah.
And the questions also on that on page 12, section 6, have you got salvage materials on hand, which is things like the sheeting and so on? Are they immediately to hand?
So we do have them, but in terms of the emergency, the emergency kit for this particular plan, I haven't gone through all of the materials we have and kind of organised them and made sure we have a list of everything and got the things that we need. I haven't done that yet. This is really just getting
Work in progress,
yeah.
All right, well that's fine. I mean, it's just having been in various situations where it's scrambling around, where the heck is this? And it's language slightly stronger than that usually. And the last thing is, to what extent have and it comes back to the emergency response, how much have they been trained? Have you done even to get people together even for a simulated exercise? Because the reality often in these situations is that you forget, well, you're doing it, oh right, I thought you were doing that, and so on. When you have time, it might be useful just to do a half-hour tabletop exercise in that with some real time. Think, okay, I can't get here for 15 minutes. Well, you can't do anything for 15 minutes. We found those were extremely effective. It makes you think again, just how is it going to work? So it's a suggestion for you to think about. If you're really desperate, need some help, I suppose I could drag something up from my memory somewhere.
Yeah, so I think the section that's, I don't think it's in here, is the final section. I think I didn't include it because a lot of it's confidential. It will be on the final version as a confidential item. Are the details of the plan, which are required to be included, but I just thought in an emergency you don't want to flick through 10 pages of text talking about the plan. It's just not, it's in there, but it's in the back because these are the things that you need to start with. But that talks through how the plans are communicated, how it's tested.
Yes, I saw elements of that.
Yeah, so we have kind of procedures within the whole Guildhall for fire evacuation, which we would do, but obviously this is very specific to the museum, so when the plan's finished, we will go through it, and it will be communicated with everyone that needs to know about it and tested
I would
properly.
say think carefully, fully about a brief simulation. It won't take you more than half an hour, just need to make sure that people really understand, because you know the problem with communication is the illusion it has occurred.
Absolutely. And I have had training in emergency planning.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
This will be music to your ears then.
Could you have a designated space that after emergency you go to, so you know, say if there are 10 people in the building, you know the 10 people are there, that are all out.
So we've got obviously our assembly point if there's evacuation of the Guildhall, across on the forecourt.
Yeah.
But I've just had confirmation from the Jubilee Centre if there was a need of a venue to use as a temporary town council. We've had agreement that the Jubilee Centre could be used.
Does the, I remember the collection, the screen in the courtroom is supposed to be, I mean, it's one of the heaviest artifacts, it's supposed to be the top priority, and that little stable door. And some of the paintings actually have dots on them.
Yeah.
So is that right, that they are prioritised?
Yeah, that's an old system. Obviously most
Well,
of
just wonder
those.
if you still have the most valuable, if you have to.
Yeah, so the priority object sheets, I've produced some of them.
Yeah.
Again, they would be in a confidential plan because
Yeah.
they tell people exactly where things are building. But yeah, they include, I don't think I put a draft version on it, they include the name of the object and photograph, its measurements, how many people would need to lift it, if they need some tools to get it off the wall, requirements such as wearing gloves, and then a floor plan of the whole building, and then a floor plan close up where it is within that room. And they would be double-sided one sheet and they're laminated, because it's quite likely the fire brigade will have those, and they will then know exactly where to come and locate things should they be salvaging for us.
And the screwdriver, they're screwed to the wall.
I know, I've included screwdrivers and things like that.
You have to use a standing up. Are you happy with that?
I think it is very comprehensive, and sorry if I've sounded a bit pedantic, but I had to do this for a living once.
Okay. Item 8. Complaint.
Sorry, was there to receive a note, that's it. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Item 8. Complaint procedure. Members to receive the museum volunteer complaint procedure decision required.
That's right, Councillor.
Sorry to keep hogging the meeting. Section 5. If the person making the complaint is comfortable the meeting will be called for both parties, what happens if a person is not comfortable? Because it seems to go silent then.
I think I'm open to a suggestion. I think what would happen is that a meeting would be called with the parties separately, basically, and notes would be taken on what they, how they state their case, basically. I think that makes sense. I should do that.
I think it might be useful just
Yeah.
to have one sentence there. And the other thing is complaints against volunteers. It said behaviour which is in breach of the volunteer policy, including policies within the appendices. Can I get a definite statement now as to whether or not all volunteers have been made aware of the social media policy? And this is very important. We need a definite statement that they have or have not been made aware, and that all of them are in this situation.
So they haven't, because the previous the policy was approved. I think it was missing a couple of things from its appendix, but there was a request to make this complaints procedure at the last meeting. So it's not been communicated with them and they haven't been asked to kind of re-agree to the policy yet, because this would be within the appendices of that policy. But as soon as this is agreed and I can check through with the town clerk and make sure the other items that might need to be in the volunteer policy, various health and safety, things like that, are all in there, they'll be communicated with them, including the social media policy.
And I have one last point. Honest is the last point. Section 4. Can you find another word than they will be dismissed? Dismissal implies an employment relationship, and it's one of the most difficult things for volunteers. They're not employees. Technically, you cannot dismiss someone who is not an employee. If you can search for some other words, if another museum have got another word, their services will no longer be required, or they will not be requested to attend. But please don't use the word dismissal. It's got employment relations dimension.
I presume all these policies will be on the website.
So, on the museum website, or do you mean the town council website? I mean, these are specific to the museum, so the expectation I think is for them to be on the museum website. I don't know if that would be a possibility.
I don't, you know what, I don't think I'm not sure our website currently allows us to upload documents to it. I don't think it's sophisticated enough to let us do that. But I will double check. It's something I have tried to have a look at before. I might be wrong. But our other policies aren't uploaded to the website either. But it can be done because it will be communicated from the volunteers anyway. And if someone new starts, they will be given the policy before they sign up to agree.
Give it a copy, wouldn't they?
So maybe in the interim then, maybe I could have a section on the STC website where we can put this sort of thing to link through.
Yes, because the complaints procedure applies to people out there, doesn't it? I mean, it's people out there who have a complaint. If you have a complaint about the museum, a member of staff and another volunteer, is this just, it's just, that's complaints from volunteers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I? Yeah, can't think what I was going to say.
Sorry.
That's all right, don't worry. Yes, is it possible that, as and when really, this gets put out to all current volunteers and they have to acknowledge that they have read an agreement to attend?
Yeah, so the previous, when the volunteer policy was, I think it was agreed, previously that was the plan, it would have to be in writing from them that they agreed to it. I just wanted to wait until I'd done this procedure because I was asked to do that. Yeah, definitely.
So it's a decision required, isn't it? So we're in favour of this. Yeah. All in favour?
With the amendments.
Yeah, amendments. Yeah.
Thank you.
Item 9, volunteer role description. Members to receive the updated volunteer role description as well as details of a new role decision required. Attachment 5, 5A, 5B, 5C.
They are the kind of the titles are slightly potentially different to what they used to be. I think it's been for me slightly unclear what the volunteers' titles. I know what I usually call them, but I felt like in past documents they were called different things. So I thought we'd just settle on proper titles. The kind of description of their role is pretty much as it always has been. It was just, I thought, useful to get it written in a kind of updated form, which will be probably within their kind of handbook or communicated to them when they sign up to whatever role they sign up to. So the first two are pretty much all as nothing's really changed on them. It's just an updated version. And then I've added a new potential position, which is would just be for 2 volunteers. And I was going to talk to the universities first, and the idea is that they would take on some of the work from research inquiries. So they'd be collections and research assistants. So when there aren't any research inquiries, they would do collections work, and when there are, they would be trained to be able to do the research and hopefully respond to them. We've had this pause on research inquiries, but it is still a capacity thing. I still get emails from people about them, and they do take quite a lot of time up. So I think this would be really useful. It's just the situation. I just need to figure out the right situation with again IT. And making sure the computers that they use in the collection store have all of the things they need to fulfil that role.
Well, no, I think it's a very, very good idea. I think that,
So we're all in favour of the update?
I think so.
There's two, just the update and then the new role.
The only thing I would say is that I think there might well be people, I can think of one in particular, who might be somebody who lives in Sandwich who we shouldn't just rely on universities to produce students, but I think it's a very good idea to approach them, and it's a very attractive thing for a student to do.
Especially young people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Councillor Black?
I've been shaking my head, I've been strong at this point.
But we're in favour, I think, of this.
That surprised you, didn't it?
Nothing we do surprise me.
Oh.
You're full of surprises. Item 10, Aim Higher and OHC grant. Members to receive an update on the Aim Higher project and suggestions using the OHC grant decision required. Attachment 6 and 6A.
So Marilyn provided a report after the skills audit and made some suggestions for some different sessions that we could run. There was a third, so there's 3 sessions, and she said if we were able to get some funding, then she would be happy to carry out the 3rd session. But we actually already got some funding that would cover us for that purpose, which is waiting to be used. And then the remainder of that funding, so that would be £500, and the remaining money, which is 1,500, could be used, which I think would be really useful, for some of her time to support me with the planning documents and the forward plan. Most of them, I think probably I'd say half of them are done in terms of all the analysis. It's just the action plan, which is, I think, quite difficult. I think having someone that really understands how a museum operates to give that second opinion would be really useful, because it's very hard for me to plan my time when it's just my time, and there's a lot to do. So that is what I would suggest, that we use that funding for it. It does fit the purpose of the funding completely. That's really what we specified when we applied for it.
Is that the lady over the Zoom meeting?
Yes.
Are we getting any more or not?
Yeah, she said at some point I'll be in touch about dates, and she will come and visit us.
Okay, decision report. We're all in favour of this. It's a good idea. Lovely.
Thank you.
Item 11, artefact repairs. Members to receive a request to repair a museum artefact. Decision required. Attachment 7.
Is this the chap at the medieval centre? Is he the one that made the models? Because he's got models, there are certainly very similar models at the medieval centre.
I don't know if he's connected to the medieval centre.
Okay, oh, sorry, okay,
I
right,
think
then
it's a
that.
better quality.
But
I think our one's a better quality.
I couldn't possibly tell.
It's done, did you say?
Well, it's to go back to the person who made it.
Yeah.
Compare it, I can't see it.
No, it's a good idea, people need to do that. Yeah.
Very wrong to to somebody
I would
else.
say that. So,
You made it, but you can't touch it.
Yeah.
Item 12, project with Sir Roger Mansfield, attachment 8. Let's put that there, isn't it?
So we were approached by the drama department about, they wanted to make a site specific piece for theatre, and so they came for a visit and we had a talk about different stories, and they looked at around the building, and I gave them some information about painting in the boardroom, some research that I found, and they decided to choose that as a subject. So they've made, it's a short piece, they really want to do something interesting. They travel through the building. It is a combination of kind of the story that we know, but also I think some fiction in there as well. And they want to do it for, there will be like a series throughout the evening, so there'll be short performances with different audiences throughout an evening in October. And I'm hoping after that I can ask if they would like to do something similar next year, and we can build a partnership from it. I know they were also interested in potentially using the main hall for one of their Christmas productions. They can't actually do it this year, unfortunately, but they're definitely going to bear it in mind. So it's good that we hopefully will build more of a partnership with them.
That's brilliant.
All in favour with this? I think all in favour with this. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well done, Lily.
Yeah, well done. Item 13, TripAdvisor Award. Members to receive a report regarding the TripAdvisor Award given to the museum. We do need a TripAdvisor to avoid different places.
So the museum was actually top, I think, for 2018 and 2019, I think, in terms of places to visit in the area. I don't know the exact title. But yeah, we've got a Traveller's Choice Award, which it says we're in the top 10% of places to visit worldwide. This was very unexpected, so I know that some volunteers do mention TripAdvisor, but I don't believe I've ever asked them to. So it must just be off of reviews that people have given us, which is very nice.
Do we get a plus?
We've got the certificate, which I will put up alongside some other ones that need to
Really?
go
On
to
the
the museum.
door?
I would just like to state that most of the good comments for this award relate to the 2 museum volunteers on a Sunday afternoon.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know their names.
They're clicking the link on TripAdvisor, that's why they put it through there. They sit there
There's
going
a
like
shoe.
that. That's what that's brilliant, isn't it? Thank you.
I think we should put it on the front door. Can't we put it on the front door? Or on the
There's
notice,
there's
with that funny little notice.
There's a little notice
outside.
down there.
there's a wall space behind the front desk, and I thought we've got a couple of certificates. We've got our kind of partnership with the University of Kent as well. We've got a certificate from that, and then usually museums put their accreditation certificate up, which we never have, but I have it from 2016, and hopefully soon we'll have a new one. So
But
there's
this
a few
is the
things
sort of
to
thing
come up.
to persuade those hesitating that, are we really interested in the museum? Now see this, if they could see it outside, to get them to go inside, that's what we want.
Okay. Item 14, date and time exceeding to be confirmed.
We do actually have that date. I haven't brought it with me.
Oh, well, that's good.
I think it's September, but I'll communicate that to members.
Okay,
Or-
thank
or
you.
we haven't. I just wanted to say as well, I'm so proud of Lily, all the work that she does, and you know, there's a lot of hard work onto this agenda, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, well done with it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you. So good,
Yeah, yeah.
thank you.